Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Game Plan. Today I want to talk to you about the ability to adapt to the battlefield. The advice I'm going to give you is pretty straightforward and probably common sense to a lot of people. However, I've seen a lot of players struggle with these concepts, so I wanted to get this out there for them. Also, on a personal note, I'd like the Game Plan series to cover all the theoretical aspects of this game, and adaptability or flexibility is definitely a part of that package. Now, what we'll be looking at today is higher level strategies, basically your overall approach to a match. Specifically, I want to talk to you about when you should adapt your strategy, how you can know what kind of adaptation to make, and lastly, how you can make sure you adapt successfully. So let's first look at when you should adapt your strategy. The answer to this question lies somewhere in the middle of flexibility and persistence. Basically, you want to adapt when your current strategy is failing or is likely to fail in the near future. The problem is, how do you know your failure is due to your own strategy and not some other factor you can't really influence? Well, often you can't know for sure. But you can do is use a good rule of thumb to guess the right answer most of the time. The rule of thumb is as follows. If you're doing worse than normal, do something else. So if you normally have a KDR of 1 and you start dying more than you kill, switch strategy. If you're normally in the top half of the scoreboard and you're stuck at the bottom, switch strategy. Now this might sound tremendously common sense, but think of all the times you ran into the same bottleneck 5 times in a row just to get mowed down. It happens to a lot of us. We get stuck in patterns that are what is called maladaptive. The reason this happens is that we're focused on the fight and not paying attention to the effort-reward payoff we're getting from our actions. To avoid this, get used to asking yourself regularly, am I still doing okay? Throughout my videos you might notice that I pull up the scoreboard every time I die. That's my effort-reward check to see if I'm still doing okay. It's the perfect way of snapping yourself out of a death streak or other unproductive behavior. You basically get a quick reminder of how you're doing compared to the rest of the team. If you see yourself dropping below your regular performance, it's time to change things up. So now you know when to adapt, but what do we actually mean when we talk about adapting our strategy? I suggest there are 2 main types of adaptation you can use in this game. First, and most basically, your play style. Are you rushing? Are you flanking? Are you sticking with your squad? This type of adaptation is about how you move around the battlefield, what objectives you focus on, and how you engage the enemy. It's the type of adaptation you want to make when there's no obvious reason for why you are doing badly. You just seem to have trouble finding your groove. Second type of adaptation is your loadout. We all have preferred classes with preferred guns and gadgets, but sometimes these just don't get the job done. If a tank is terrorizing your team and no one is taking it out, grab an RPG or some C4. If you're playing Rush and your whole squad keeps needing to spawn back in the base, maybe a spawn beacon would make all the difference. To figure out these loadout-based adaptations, you really need to look at why you're not doing so well. If it's not so much your personal skill level, but some dynamic in the current situation, then chances are you can make a huge difference by switching your loadout to deal with the complications. Okay, so now we got all our facts straight. We know when to adapt and what kind of adaptation to make. But how do we make sure it really works out? How do you truly adapt successfully? The trick here is to realize what you are capable of in this moment. Your skills depend both on your overall ability with any one strategy, but also on your state of mind while you're playing. The important thing here is not to try to adapt in ways you're not comfortable with. Recognize your strengths and your weaknesses and don't try to plug holes that you can't. For instance, it might be great for your team if someone took out that damn tank. But if you're not good at that, then you're better off focusing on something you are good at, like keeping the infantry at bay maybe, or restocking the engineers engaging the tank. Basically, don't be too hard on yourself. If you're a beginning player, don't switch classes too often. It's easier to learn the classes one by one and become a well-rounded player in the long run than to keep switching within one match when you haven't really mastered any of the classes yet. Once you've mastered a class or a dynamic, you'll see you can use it whenever you want. See it as building up your arsenal of skills and limit all your adaptations to that arsenal whenever you're playing for the win. So all in all, the trick to adapting yourself on the battlefield is to keep an eye on your performance so you know when to change things up. Then to realize what kind of change will help you and your team the most. And lastly, to realize what changes you can successfully execute so you don't overextend yourself. I hope this video gave you some insight into how to adapt more successfully to the battlefield. And if you enjoyed it, feel free to give a thumbs up or leave a comment. Thank you for watching.
I'm engaging! Here's your med kit.